Hi guys, welcome to Kitchen Sink Recipes episode 5. I'm going to keep the bloopers in. So the point of all of these is being able to cook food basically on whatever's laying around. Assemble a meal from what you got in your apartment. And I figured during this time of pandemic, stretching with what you already got and finding new ways to use it and make it edible is probably an important skill. This is something I have done for years. I have an oddly stocked uh, kitchen and pantry, partly because I get most of my food from food banks. I have for years because the jobs I had, even with a college degree, just barely did not give me enough for a full livable wage for a person living alone and a single father. So I've developed the skill that I've had for years to learn how to make do with whatever I've got laying around. So my last couple of recipes have been a little odd. They've been a little experiments and a lot less in what is my normal kitchen sink recipe. Today, this is going to be something that's a pretty classic of what I might make. Um, so if you're a single guy working, single woman too, you kind of need to cook something that's going to last you a week because you only have the opportunity to cook maybe once a week. So normally you'll make a whole pot of something. My last one that I wasn't able to do is pretty common. It's turkey bone soup, where I had the carcass left over from a holiday turkey from my family's house. I took it and froze it, and then I boiled the hell out of it and picked the meat off of it, separated the bones, and added. So, and this, in that case, I added some wild rice. Rice is a very common staple you're given at food banks. So is pasta. So the normal formula is a random meat that I'll pull from my fridge, vegetables of whatever sort I have, spices of whatever sort I have, some kind of a sauce, and then pasta or rice. Kind of making a full pot meal. Now, normally that comes into something like a soup because I have not egg noodles, I have elbows today. It's going to be more of a pasta. Looks like I only have a little bit of those. All right. So we're going to start by boiling the pasta. Get that going. You'll notice that I'll have to move things around 100 times. You'll notice that this is a pretty typical, you only get once a week to do housework or cook kitchen, in that I have dishes everywhere. Burner. All right, let's get a spoon to stir that around. I strongly prefer these big old metal spoons for making these pot things. I mean, if you're not careful, you can scratch up your nice pan, but actually hold together. I don't like the wooden ones so much. All right, so now for the meat part. So I've got this this chicken here. I didn't have a whole lot to go for it. I put a little bit of nature seasoning I have on it. It's one of the few things that I actually buy spice-wise. And I actually put it in a broth. All I had was beef bouillon, so I used a little bit of beef bouillon for that. Now, the one problem is I forgot to take this out of the oven before it was done. I mean, when it was supposed to be done. Thankfully, it did cook off all the broth, but didn't burn this because I was distracted. So we're cooking the pasta. We got some elbows going on. So what we're going to do right now, these are a couple of chicken breasts that were given to me by the food bank. Probably the cheapest version you can get. They're not skinless. They're not boneless. It's the stuff that probably doesn't sell as well at the grocery store. So I went ahead and baked them 350, about an hour covered and another half an hour uncovered. Actually went a full hour almost uncovered. That's why all the broth is gone. Now, and that's something you do have to kind of plan. If you're going to make a meal, especially something that'll last all week, you do have to plan ahead of time. And part of the reason I overshot my time on it was because I set it and left. I did have a timer on, but I wasn't in the house when it was going off. So what we got to do right now is separate the chicken from the bones. We're going to kind of shred it up with our hands. Let me get a bowl. I'll put that into while our pasta is cooking. I promise you I washed my hands before this. Actually, this stuff's really tender, so the extra half an hour might have been just right. The broth was to help keep it nice and juicy, especially in some of this cheaper stuff. I mean, it has a higher fat and salt content, too. There's that, but we are cooking to survive, not really for health. So when it comes to peeling things off the bone, I find by hand is probably the best option. This is something similar I had to do with the turkey bone soup, as you get all the little tiny bones and stuff in there. You never get it all out, but enough where you won't stab yourself or break your teeth on a giant piece of bone. You do your best. So some nicely seasoned, really tender chicken. We're going to make something pretty simple. So it's a staple food. It's pasta, vegetables. It's an all-in-one kind of a pot. Some spices. You got your 4 food groups, I think. No, minus fruit. I guess fruit goes with vegetables. I'm not sure. Got your protein. Now, one thing I learned, a lot of my early getting interested in cooking, minus the growing up cooking with my mom and being pretty well trained by her, was home ec class. We did a lot of Asian dishes. So one of the things that they are pretty known for is things to stretch out meat. Rice is one of them. Tofu is a meat substitute because they didn't have quite the farmland that we did, but had tons of rice paddies. So they would try to find ways to get the meat that's in their food to last a lot longer. Rice and pasta are one of those. Vegetables also help. Now this has got some of that skin in there too. I'm going to go ahead and just use the skin. I'm going to use every part of the free food we're given. Now, a lot of you might be having your first experiences with food bank food now. I'll give you a heads up. They're not known for their nutrition and they're not known for their variety. They're known for keeping you alive. If this is your first time experiencing it, I strongly recommend in the future when you're doing those food drives and food banks, you consider things with a little bit more variety. I will never eat raisins and tuna again because I just got sick of it from years of having so much of it from food banks. And I kind of have to come up with creative ways to keep eating rice. And of course, it varies too. In our overly litigious American society, like I live in a larger city that's full of restaurants. So every so often you'll get the old frozen pizzas from Pizza Hut or things of that nature. But most restaurants discard a ton of food because they're just afraid of being sued. Even stores like Big Lots or whatever, when the food's past its best by date and it's already gone to its secondary store, you know, like a closeout wholesaler like Big Lots, they'll throw it right in the trash in large amounts. So there is a ton of food waste in the country. I mentioned in one of my previous videos, it might have been an art video, it might have been I think it was a kitchen sink recipe. Rust Belt Riders is a company that tries to mitigate that by picking up leftover food scraps to use to make compost. It doesn't work as well for protein-based things like this. I said larger city. I guess for a city, Mentor, Ohio is actually pretty small. It's on the far east side of Cleveland. That's why I recommend doing this by hand. One is you can crack up a little bit of crispy on the skin from being a little bit overcooked. It's not really that overcooked. Thankfully, I had quite a good amount of broth in that. All right, let's get all this nice and shredded up. And wash your hands. Let's make our stuff start to boil. Come on, I want to get you off the boil. This is why I'm doing it by hand. There's no way you can get all this off there, and I don't like to waste any meat. I'm not just going to trim off what's convenient to get from the meat. It's part of the reason I take the carcasses from, turkeys and hams from holidays for my families, because that's one of the things. There is, at that point in time, there's such a surplus of the meat coming off of the bird that people will do that. They'll just cut off what's convenient from the bird, but they'll leave a ton of little bits and pieces around all the bones and everything. And there's more than enough in that to make a full pot of soup. All right. Now later on, I'm actually going to use some of that boiled water and rinse it into this pan where the broth was. Get a little bit more of that chicken flavor back into it. Here my stuff's boiling quite heavily. I have it all the way up to get it to that rolling boil. I can turn it down a bit now. Carry that up. Now, I'm pretty bare bones when it comes to cooking. So those elbows I put in there, normally people would salt the water, put oil in it, keep them from sticking together. Yeah, I'm sure that helps, but if I don't have salt or oil or want to use it on this, I'm gonna just boil it in plain old water. Moving the dishes around so I can cook again. Give that pasta just a second to cook. Need the sink clean so I can drain that pasta when it's ready. Then it's just a matter of slapping it all together. I'm gonna go check my message. Okay, while we're letting that pasta cook, I have all that. We'll use some of that. As I mentioned, one of the surpluses I have is this margarine. I have some frozen onions here in this fridge somewhere. Unless I use them all. Nope, right there. So when you do get produce from these places, and good luck getting a produce giveaway when it's not the summer, one of the things you get quite a lot is onions, to the point that they go bad long before you use them. So I'll actually dice them up and freeze little sandwich bags full of them to be used in recipes like this. Normally I would just pour it in a pot of boiling water, but I don't want to rinse off all the onion flavor. So I'm actually going to take it out of the bag and nuke it a little bit. Thaw them out. Rinse that to. We're going to stick a whole stick of that in there. One thing you'll learn from a mother that cooks in the Midwest, and, a big fan of Paula Deen, is a ridiculous amount of butter. In this case, it's a, butter substitute margarine, which is probably partly classic, but it's got a good flavor to it. Let's start opening the vegetables. So I got a whole variety of stuff. I got some baked beans because I'm going to put a little bit of sweet in the sauce with that. But I got your carrots, I got your corn, my peas, and I got some green beans. It's going to be a whole medley of whatever I have. When I do get the lucky opportunity of getting fresh produce from some of these places, and I'll even freeze potatoes so I can have breakfast potatoes later. I'll start to hoard my canned vegetables. Because as any poor person would tell you, these will last forever. And I use these to get me through the winters when I don't have fresh produce. It's not as good as a fresh produce. It's not as good as frozen produce. But it is what you get given at food banks. One thing I do recommend, though, is draining and rinsing them. These things are heavily saturated with salt. Got to grab a bowl to put all those vegetables into. Halloween bowls. I got the extra giant strainer out because I'm going to be using it to drain that pasta here in a bit. I'm going to be getting real sweet. I recycle all my metal here. There's no reason why we shouldn't recycle metal in the United States. It's the most convenient thing to recycle. Really, there shouldn't be a reason we can't recycle all sorts of everything. Paper, plastic, glass. But the infrastructures for those sorts of things are lacking. Metal, however, has got a very robust infrastructure because of the high value. Why scrappers are constantly stealing people's metal. So you don't get much for steel, and you might not think it's worth the effort, but it's one less thing going to a scrapyard, or one less thing going to a junkyard, a dump. And I assure you, we send way too much to the dump as it is. Beans here in a second, as you do. I'm going to drain that pot, but I'm going to keep the boiling hot water to use for our sauce. That was our onions and our stick of butter. Super quick now. There is our pasta to that. We're going to pour some of our boiling water back into the baking dish that we used earlier. just to get some of that. I'm going to give that a few seconds to cool down. Now, turning that burner off, I'm going to turn this burner on so you guys can get a better look. So here is our pasta with those frozen onions in it and that thick of butter. I'm going to give that a few minutes to melt down before I start sticking some of these colder items into it. This chicken and this the vegetables. And I think the last thing we'll do is the spices. I'll have to make our sauce for this guy too. For our sauce, we're going to water down actually just a regular old can of turkey gravy. A little bit of a pot pie flavor to this, I guess. We're going to do some seed. We got a lot of different seed stuff here. Possibly a little bit of bouillon. So I've got this bouillon here. I'm way out of chicken bouillon, so I'm going to use beef. So that might change this up a bit on us. But since I have this pan of boiling water here, and I used beef bouillon in it earlier, let's go ahead and melt those into that. Ooh, that's oniony smelling. I promise you, it won't be that oniony smelling once we get all the other stuff into it. Let that dissolve for a bit. Get another sip of my coffee. Check the internets. Remind me to blow up my nose. I didn't want to do it by the food. I know, you're not seeing me wash my hands after I do it. I promise you it's just a sinusitis. As my son's mother pointed out to me yesterday. It's not infected. It's just the typical problems you get from Ohio's weather at this time of the year. Something nicely. Back to you shortly. All right. And that was a super long wait. Sizzling up nice and good. Oniony buttery noodles. Not sure how well can be seen. There we go. All right. Put the chicken in. Now I'm making a whole pot of this. I expect it to last me all week long. One of the things I'll tell you, now this is more or less a brand new pan I just got, but you know, If you're utilizing food from the food bank, you may not have the best hands. Keep it moving constantly so it doesn't burn to the bottom. I've had lots of issues with it. Kind of getting real stuck to the bottom from cheap pans. Not all those can afford Emerald or Paula Deen or Martha Stewart fancy name brand pans. There. Go ahead and let that start to sizzle a bit. Let's go ahead and find ourselves some spices. Now, I don't have many spices left at this point in time, which is why I'm going to be trying to utilize the bouillon. I don't think turmeric's going to be good in there. I have a ton of chili powder for some reason, but I have to be a little picky on how much of that I use. I went overboard on that not too long ago and burned myself up pretty good. Or I have to stuff Chipotle. Let's throw a dash of that in there. All right, just because I have it, some celery seed. Give it a little bit more earthy flavor to it. Ton of that. You don't need much. I got 2 whole things there too. Okay, there's plenty of celery seed. I'm just kind of doing it, eyeballing it. Sesame seed probably wouldn't be too great for this, but the hell with it. In it goes. Oh yeah, that's kind of that celery seed's got kind of a tiny aroma to it. Not bad. You can still smell the onions in there. I know a lot of people aren't big fans of things being real oniony, but I promise you it won't be that oniony when I'm done. It's already starting to mitigate itself with the other stuff I put into it. Now let's try this stuff I found. The Mesa Rosa Chipotle Urban Accents Southwestern Smoky Blend. Apparently it's stuck to the bottom. Time to butter knife it out. Stab, 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 stab. All right, that's probably enough of that. All right, that actually smells pretty good. Might have made this a hair spicier than I want. Chili powder would be, if you really like it spicy, add some chili powder to this. Not bad at all. Go ahead and open up those baked beans. So I want to add a little bit of sweet to it. These I'm not going to drain. If you really want to go down that like smoky baked bean flavor route, I would recommend a little bit of brown sugar. I'm not going to do that because I don't really want it that sweet. Plus, I'm not sure I have any of that left. Scoop out a little bit of this water just to rinse a bit more of the bean into there. If you're going to recycle your cans, your metal cans, which I recommend you do, rinse them out first. It just makes the whole process easier on everyone. And you don't have cans sitting around that are holding crap into them. Beans. See if I can get you a picture of what this looks like. I haven't added most of the vegetables yet. Can you see that? I'm waiting to add the nature seasoning. That's kind of an all-purpose seasoning made by Morton. Vegetables. All right, so these are my canned vegetables. Peas, corn, carrots, and green beans. All right, we're gonna have a pretty hearty dish here. This would actually, minus the pasta, I guess, but this would actually make a pretty good pot pie filling too. You had old pie shells laying around in your freezer. I think this is gonna make a fancy, fancy dinner. All right. Nature's seasoning up now, I think. I guess the sauce will be what we do last. As you can see, a lot of this is real ad lib. I'm kind of trying as I go. And you're not going to get it right always the first time. I promise you, even if it's not right, you can always salvage it some other way. I've had to do that plenty of times. These Rosa stuffs. Real strong. I was going to put more nature seasoning in there. I don't think I need it. And for our sauce. Here's our turkey gravy. The reason I'm reusing this stuff here is I don't want to make it too wet. We're not adding too much water. Let's add this boiled water from this. Little bit of depression era cooking, and that's you reusing the boiled water you cooked other food in. I could use reuse the hot dog water. Now let's bring this guy to a boil and let it thicken up. Even if this still has free floating water in it and fine, I promise you that pasta's still going to absorb more later. Make that into a boil. Since this now has liquid in it, I can't really open it up and show it to you. See if I can get the camera from this over here to bring it over and show you. There you go. See, we're going to bring that up to a boil. Put the dishes in the stack for later. Enjoy my dinner with. 4:22. That's technically dinner time, although this is actually my second meal of the day. Smelling stuff. This is real time, so I'm not going to be stopping the camera for you while we're waiting for things to cook. So you'll just have to wait a second. Feel free to fast forward, or you can listen to my clicking backgrounds. I suppose a lid would probably be helpful to make that a little longer, wouldn't it? Sure is. Look at that fancy lid. That did not do what I hoped it would do. It's supposed to lock on, I guess. Give that a second. I'm sure with everyone being at home, utilizing the computers much, much more for streaming and everything. Running a virus scan on my computer right now and C Cleaner. I highly recommend that program, cleaning the junk off your computer. Getting a bit of smoke coming off there that smells like burned smoke. The bottom of the pan is smoky. I bet that burner. Oh, yeah. That burner's got some junk on it. But I'm still waiting for this to turn to boil. I did wash that pan after I got it, so shouldn't be anything I'm worried about. That sounds like a boil. Oh, yeah, that's a good boil. We are done. Just wanted to bring it up to a boil to heat everything through, more or less. I promise you this will thicken more upon standing, but I am really hungry, so I am piecing myself out some right now to cool off a little bit quicker. That bowl is really effing hot. So here you go. We're going to call this Chicken Pot Medley. Some chicken breast, some cans of vegetables, beans, and some elbow macaroni with a sauce with some additional spices, some seeds, and basically gravy. Gravy and some bouillon as its base. Smells good, but I cannot eat that yet. So we're going to stop here. I hope that one was helpful to you. It's just a general approach. So as I said, a normal kitchen sink recipe. If you need to make yourself a pot of stuff that's going to last you all week till you can cook next. A meat of some version that you pull out of your freezer, a vegetable, and then a pasta or a rice. Then you spice and add sauce to whatever you got laying around. I hope this one was helpful, and I'll catch you guys next time.